Everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know we have friends from all over the world that usually tune in. My name is Gabriela Zanfir-Fortuna. I'm Vice President for Global Privacy at the Future of Privacy Forum, which means I have the pleasure and the honor of having met and having talked to wonderful privacy thought leaders like my guest today. I'm very happy to introduce Commissioner Philippe Dufresne. Commissioner, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here, Gabriela.
Commissioner Dufresne is the Commissioner of the Federal Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada. And I think it's quite interesting to also mention that he was appointed Privacy Commissioner after being a legal expert on human rights, administrative and constitutional law, who served as the law clerk and parliamentary counsel of the House of Commons. I think the background in human rights is absolutely a wonderful path that leads to privacy and to meaningful privacy. Commissioners, speaking about human rights and privacy, before we dive a bit into the main topic of today, which is the Global Privacy Assembly and trends in global privacy that we are expecting to see developing in the following year, I would like to ask about some of the very recent activity your office has been doing to protect the rights of children, to protect youth in the online space, because I know that is one of the things that your office cares a lot about. Can you share an overview of the most important things happening in that space recently?
Thank you so much, Gabriela, for this invitation, this opportunity to speak with you, and thank you to the FPF for all the thought leaders. Speaking of thought leadership, for the incredible work that you do and your colleagues do in this space, and for highlighting my human rights background, which is very, very useful and relevant in this role. And we talk about privacy as a fundamental right. We talk about privacy as supporting other fundamental rights. And so that is a lens that I have been applying since my appointment in this role, and I can really build on that. And I'll talk later about what the GPA is doing, including the Privacy and Other Human Rights Awards, which is another way of showcasing that link and how privacy and human rights build on each other and support each other. And this is one of the reasons, I think, why myself and so many of my colleagues around the world and in Canada have highlighted children's privacy as a top issue. When we talk about fundamental rights, we have to think about children. When we talk about groups that are perhaps more vulnerable, that are going to be impacted differently and that they're going to be impacted longer, we have to think about children. So we have this fascinating world of privacy now where we're dealing with fast-moving technology. So we're dealing with the present, but we're dealing with the future. And again, children are the future, and they're living this world in a way that I didn't live it growing up. So a lot of that focus has been for my office and so many others to bring that children's privacy lens and that best interest of the child lens to our work as privacy regulators and working with industry and civil society to bring up the key challenges of children being impacted by social media, the key challenge of children being asked to use technology in schools, so with no choice but to use it, and being exposed to that, being exposed to privacy breaches, being exposed to targeted ads. So a lot of our work has been on that. Recently, for the Day of the Child, we announced the creation of our first youth council at the OPC. Others have done this. My colleagues in Ontario have done this, and we are following in the footsteps of the UK ICO with the Children's Code, and so much of that work. And we're seeing this around the world in terms of age assurance, in terms of child appropriate design, in terms of looking at the best interest of children. So we've launched our youth council. I look forward to getting to know them, to getting their insights and their advice. I always joke that I feel like I'm still quite young, but I'm not that young, and I need that perspective of people who are younger than me. And hearing it it just shows you that privacy is alive and well, is a top priority. We focused our regulatory efforts with a children's protection lens. So we had concluded our investigation of TikTok that I did with provincial colleagues in Quebec, in British Columbia, and Alberta. And specifically, we found, is TikTok doing enough to protect children by keeping underage children off the site and by informing children of all ages, particularly 14 to 18, in terms of the use and the consequence of the data. And on both fronts, we found that TikTok was not doing enough, and they have agreed to improve their practices. So we're developing a children's code. We're working on age assurance, and hopefully we will have modernized legislation in Canada that will recognize children's privacy as a priority. So we're pushing that very hard, and as one of my priorities as GPA Chair includes children's privacy. So we're going to continue to work on that, absolutely.
That is such a wonderful segue, and thank you for providing this overview. It's clear that this is a focus of your office. And this is a great segue to the second part of our conversation, because earlier this fall, in September, we had the Global Privacy Assembly in Seoul, in South Korea, one of the best editions that I had the pleasure to attend. And during the GPA, your office was appointed chair of the Global Privacy Assembly, which means that you will have a key role in setting the priorities, in leading the conversation of global privacy regulators from more than 130 jurisdictions at this point that are members of the GPA. Speaking about the meeting in Seoul, what were your main takeaways of the reunion in September? What were the key things that were discussed there?
Well, thank you, and you're right. It was an amazing event, and hats off to my colleagues from the PIPC Korea for being such wonderful hosts for the open session, for the closed session. Former chairperson Ko had a great pleasure working with him on that. Also, the GPA Secretariat, the NPC Philippines, and the interim GPA chair Borislav Bozinav from Bulgaria. So lots of work, and there's a great paper that summarizes that conference that FPF you have launched. You have published yesterday, I believe. So I commend that to everyone. It was really focused. The theme was artificial intelligence in our daily lives, data and privacy issues. So there's definitely a focus on AI, but there were also focuses, and this is similar. This is consistent with my priorities that I've announced when I was proposing myself as GPA chair, which are children's privacy, technology and privacy, and also cross-border trade and data transfers. And those themes were all discussed in the panels, and they came up, particularly AI and children came up in the resolutions that have been adopted. So I think that we are seeing that focus, and I agree with the FPF's piece where you've described the GPA meetings as a good bellwether for the priorities of the global data protection and privacy regulators community. I think the GPA is that, and it needs to continue to be that. There's good discussions on health, ethical governance of AI, an amazing lineup of experts and speakers. There was a panel on AI today, but AI as it is evolving, specifically agentic AI and privacy, where again, the FPF had a leadership role. Jules Poloneski was a great speaker and panelist there, along with my colleague, John Edwards, ICO commissioner. I was privileged to moderate a panel on enhancing interoperability of cross-border data transfers. So another continuing area of focus and priority. I was there with Professor Kuhner, Commissioner Kasate from OPC Kenya, Commissioner Asai from the PPC Japan, and Professor Joel from the American University's Washington College of Law. So you can see that there is this coming together of privacy regulators, academics talking on these issues. The GPA was also able to allow for the signing of a joint statement by commissioners on building trustworthy data governance frameworks for artificial intelligence. So a statement that had been built on earlier and signed by a number of commissioners, but then bringing together so many more commissioners and highlighting the importance of developing innovative and privacy protective AI, but also cross-regulatory collaboration. So that also continued that theme of AI. And then the resolutions themselves, one on human oversight of decisions involving AI that calls on organizations to consider adopting technologies and processes that allow for meaningful human oversight, and talks about what that means, what are some of the best practices and things that we want to see in terms of the success of those meaningful human oversight roles, and what common understanding should come of that. So I was really privileged to lead the drafting of this and working with many colleagues. A resolution on the use of personal information to train AI models that was sponsored by the OAIC Australia, reiterating the importance of applying the privacy protective principles in this space, and calling on members to educate, coordinate enforcement efforts, and share information. And that very much aligns with the ongoing priority of the GPA of enforcement collaboration with respect to all areas, but in particular AI. And speaking of children, a resolution on the data privacy in digital education, which authored by the Institute for Transparency, Access to Public Information, Protection of Personal Data, the state of Mexico. Again, talking about the importance of the curriculum and encouraging those principles in schools. And speaking of which, this is also something that my office has done last week, is the issuance of a joint resolution with my colleagues in the provinces and Canada and the territories about ed tech, and the principles and expectations that we have in this space. Again, when children are required to use this technology, making sure that this is done in a way that complies with the fundamental privacy principles and in a way that is safe from privacy breaches. There was also the adoption by the GPA of the 2026 Privacy and Human Rights Award process, something that we had launched a year ago. We had the first iteration of the prize, and we will be giving the award now for its second year at RightsCon 2026 on May 5th and 8th in Zambia. And really, this award is another recognition of the interconnectedness between privacy and other fundamental rights, and it celebrates organizations who are championing privacy in the context of things like the rights of the child, or freedom of internet access and free expression. So lots of exciting things going on there, and also international collaboration, always a big part of our discussion. In the closed session, I was fortunate to be on the panel with my colleague, the UK ICO commissioner, and we talked about our joint investigation for the breach of 23andMe, for example, and sharing best practices and how to achieve as much outcome as we can working together. And as you mentioned, there is the election of the new EXCO. So I was honored to be elected as chair, and really look forward to working with my other colleagues on EXCO. And we'll have a good representation there with Bulgaria, Georgia, South Africa, Jersey, Dubai, and Korea. So very much looking forward to working with them.
This is all extraordinarily substantial. There has been so much work done, so much work concluded during the GPA week with the adopted resolutions. And I'm wondering whether you can share a bit of an inside scoop, let's say, about the work that's happening in between the annual meetings. The annual conference happens, of course, once a year, and for a number of days, expanded to a week now. However, all of this work must happen and be prepared, I imagine, in between. Can you share how that works in such a big global organization? Are there working groups from DPAs? How are you coordinating in between meetings?
Absolutely. So the work definitely continues between those big events, and we have a number of working groups that are being coordinated by the executive committee's strategic direction subcommittee. We have working group on global frameworks and standards, digital economy, data protection and other rights and freedoms, digital education, international enforcement cooperation, ethics and data protection and AI, digital citizen and consumer, data sharing, personal data protection and international development aid, data protection metrics, intersectional gender perspective. So lots of issues, and those working groups work together during the year on many things, keeping each other informed of development, planning for the next discussions and next resolution. Obviously, these resolutions need to be drafted and consulted upon by the time we get to the closed session, but also following up on some of the commitments in the resolutions that are adopted. So some of the resolutions, for instance, that were adopted this year on AI have some commitments and things that here's what DPAs will be doing to promote and to protect. So the working groups follow up on that. And in terms of the ad hoc things that happen, I'll point specifically to the International Enforcement Cooperation Working Group, for instance, where this is the hub where ongoing investigators can contact each other and have closed sessions to talk about ongoing investigations. We've diversified the work in terms of co-chairs from Europe, North America, Asia, and Latin America to make it more accessible. We have worked on a joint statement last year on finalizing joint statement on data scraping. That was the result of the in-between conference work of the IEWG Enforcement Collaboration Working Group. We have capacity building sessions, really important. Not all DPAs are the same size and resources and experience. So it's very, very helpful and important to share experiences and best practices. And frankly, even the bigger DPAs, we can learn a lot from smaller organizations who bring a different perspective and bring a different cultural viewpoint. So had recent discussions this week. Actually, I was speaking with colleagues in APA, the Asia Pacific privacy authorities, who were meeting in Macau, and we talked about different cultures. So you may have a culture in a certain country that's going to be more open. Citizens are going to be sharing more. And how do you protect privacy in that space? And how do you raise awareness? So other culture might be very, very open to being early adopters of technology. So that perspective, absolutely unique. And the GPA executive itself then working on planning for the strategic priorities, which we will be updating next year at a conference in Dubai. And making sure, and one of the things I want to do is really expand our voice and make sure that we can be heard even more broadly. And so thank you for this opportunity, which is one way of doing it. And then again, administrative things like choosing the host for upcoming conferences and starting that planning. So lots happening even between those meetings. And I encourage the community to reach out to DPAs and to the Secretariat in the Philippines, because your ideas are really important as we plan and build for the next events.
So I think it's safe to say that we are seeing a more and more integrated global privacy assembly, and we've seen the community grow so much. Important to highlight that the GPA is quite old in terms of institutions that have been going on. It's more than 40 years old, and it started as a small club of privacy authorities, privacy commissioners, and it expanded together with the whole field. And as countries started adopting data protection and privacy laws and appointing dedicated regulatory bodies, What is your vision of GPA Chair in this regard? Do you see the GPA continuing to be more integrated, more relevant? Do you think AI will maybe wreck that from the direction it's going? Because all of the attention and focus is so much on AI and AI regulatory activity right now. How does that whole question fit within your vision and plan as the GPA chair?
Thank you. Well. First, I firmly believe, and this has been said many times, including by the G7, including by the GPA, that privacy regulation and AI regulation are absolutely integrated. So the privacy principles apply to AI. AI is built on data, including personal information. So the principles that we have there are absolutely key. And the GPA plays a key role there. I think that you're right that it has grown. It has grown in size and in scale, but it has also grown in complexity. And we are now seeing the complexity of the legal principles, but we're the complexity of the technology itself, and the complexity of the data transfers across jurisdictions and across regulatory fields. So that coordination, I think the IAPP is called the digital entropy, about a bit of a chaos that has to be managed. And so I think the GPA role is more important than ever, because in this complexity, in this multiplicity of not only DPAs, but also regional groups, we'll talk about the G7, I talked about the Asia Pacific authorities, there are many others, helping citizens and industry and academia and governments make sense of it all, I think sometimes requires coordination, sometimes requires, as much as possible, a one-stop shop, or at least a coordination shop. And I think that's a key important role that the GPA can do, not only speaking as a GPA, as the grouping of all members, but also as a place where regional groups can come together and meet and exchange views. And that goes both ways. So at the GPA, we invite the G7 and APA and all of the group, the Francophonie, Europe, the EDPB, and so on. But vice versa, we will also go and speak to those groups to hear the views. So as commissioner and as chair, that collaboration is absolutely key, and how we can find commonalities, because we will have differences across regions. That's normal. That's good. We need to build on those strengths, but we need to make sure that we have those bridges together. And Canada is and will continue to be a bridge, I think, between the different regions, the different cultures, the different regulatory regimes around the world. We bring a North American perspective, where we understand privacy laws that can be based on commerce or consumer protection, or separation of powers in a federation with a federation of provinces and state, privacy by design, the importance of innovation and risk-taking, and so on. We also very much understand the European perspective of fundamental rights and the individual protection, and the citizens' rights. We understand and value the Asian tradition, I would say, about having the coexisting, very strong, very rich tradition and history, but also early adoption of technology and innovation and embracing technology. We have links with Africa, linguistic, cultural, the Francophonie. We're a bilingual culture. We're a country. We're a bi-juridical culture, so civil law, common law. We work with the Adequate Countries Group, with the Commonwealth. And so really that coordination, that collaboration is really part of the DNA in Canada. And I think that we need to have that. The GPA can very much play that role. And I talked about groups, but I would also say even at the individual level, it was very interesting, as mentioned, some cultures, some individuals are more open about sharing. Others are more guarded. But everyone has the fundamental right to privacy, and everyone has to have that protection, but also doing it in a what I could call a way of a principled pragmatism, where you have those strong principles, they have to work on the ground. They have to be doable by industry. They have to be doable by governments. Government has to be able to provide national security and efficient services to citizens. Industry has to be able to thrive. So that's a big part of the role that privacy plays. And as GPA, my vision and priority for now, but we'll be talking with the colleagues in EXCO, of course, and with the entire membership setting our strategic plan. But I've highlighted youth privacy. I've highlighted privacy and fast emerging technologies, and I've highlighted cross-border trade, because I think these are all areas where right now things are happening that impact privacy and that give opportunities as well. I'll also be focusing internally with the GPA to try to bring even more communication and understanding about the GPA itself, how its decisions are made, but also showcasing the GPA's voice in its resolutions, in its statement, having that message heard far and wide, and having the GPA help individual DPAs all over the world to reinforce the vision. And I've seen it in Canada when I go to my parliamentary committees and I speak to my legislators in my parliament, and bringing the voice of the international community and saying, this has been a resolution of the GPA. This is a statement by the G7. It brings a lot of weight and attention. So I think we can help DPAs and we can help governments make better decisions by bringing that collective voice and showing that this is indeed shared principles that are absolutely consistent with innovation, strong economies, and the public interest.
Listening to you explaining how all of this works and how you would want it to further develop almost makes one think about the fact that privacy might bring some sanity in geopolitics in the sense of this being an area where we're seeing, frankly, a lot of cooperation and collaboration internationally, and even the need to do more in this sense. Speaking of that, perhaps briefly, and I know we are approaching the end of the time allotted for this, but very briefly, this year you have also chaired the roundtable of DPAs in the G7. This is a different format of cooperation. Are there synergies between the agenda of the roundtable of DPAs of the G7 and the GPA? And are you seeing privacy of potentially a sane space for geopolitics?
Well, I love that question, and I think the link with privacy supporting politics and supporting making sense of chaos sometimes, I think, is a powerful one, and also that privacy is an absolutely necessary condition to democracy and freedom itself. So that makes sense. I think there's a lot of commonalities between the top priorities that the G7 has been pushing and that the GPA is looking at. And in fact, there's been a lot of mutual reinforcement of that. I remember and I think that's when we met Gabriela in Tokyo at the Japanese-led G7 meeting. And that was the first time that the G7 issued the statement on AI not being a law-free zone, but being subject to existing laws, including privacy laws. There's a very, very strong statement. I was very proud to be part of that. And then that was taken up by the GPA itself. And so there was this amplification of the voices. And so this year, and that was the same with the declarations in Rome, where you had statements of the G7 roundtable on children and AI and on the role of DPAs in the regulation of AI, themes that were also taken up by the GPA. So I was very honored to host my colleagues at the G7 this June in Ottawa. And because nature is core to Canadian identity, I hosted them in the Gatineau Park, which is a nature setting, but also a historic setting in Canada, where a lot of our constitutional discussions took place. And we came up with a statement under the theme of championing privacy in a digital age, collective action today for a trusted tomorrow. And our joint statement was on promoting responsible innovation and protecting children by prioritizing privacy. So it really highlighted themes like Privacy is good for business. Privacy will give you a competitive advantage, especially if you do it at the front end, especially if you can showcase that you do it. Citizens want that. And also, protecting and prioritizing privacy is key to the protection of children and to the best interest of the child, and how we need to make sure that sites that are accessed by or by which children are confronted have the best interest of the child, and privacy is built in. So there's very much a commonality of themes there between the G7 and frankly other groups, regional groups, and APA, adequate groups, Francophonie and EDPB is within the G7 discussion. So we've had wonderful exchanges. We're going to be meeting again in 2 weeks to have the handover to France, which will then be hosting next year. But I do believe that there's a lot of opportunity for mutually reinforcing collaboration between us.
I would say that listening to all of this that is happening in the international regulatory space in privacy almost makes one hope that privacy is indeed not dead. As this has been the headline for a long time, and it feels like with the data intensive advancements of technology right now, perhaps this is a risk that's bigger than ever. So is that a safe thing to say? Privacy is not dead? And perhaps before we conclude.
Absolutely, I think privacy is more alive than ever, and I hear that statement anecdotally. Oh well, there's a big challenge for privacy, but I think we're in fact seeing the opposite, where there is more and more awareness of privacy by citizens. We've done surveys in Canada where 9 in 10 Canadians are concerned about the protection of their privacy. The IAPP's data, I think, suggests nearly 68% of consumers worldwide are either somewhat or very concerned about their online privacy. We're seeing stats where Canadians are less willing to share their personal information with organizations, particularly when there's been a data breach. We're seeing Canadians take action in terms of, as consumers, who they're going to do business with and who they're not going to do business with. So I think the work that the community has been doing is working. And we are seeing privacy, and I think that was highlighted in our G7 statement, being recognized as an asset, as a competitive asset to reinforce trust, and being an issue that CEOs have to be accountable for, not just because a particular legislation would mandate that, and that's always a good thing when you do that from an accountability standpoint, but from the reality of the leadership's role in making sure that the brand of an organization is solid, that privacy protection in safeguarding information, in being transparent with users is important. And I think particularly with respect to children's privacy, we're seeing more and more of that. When we issued our decision on TikTok, there was significant interest in Canada and in Canadian media, where people feeling that this is very concrete, very meaningful. So our work is at the same time sometimes quite complex. If we talk about the technology, if we talk about pets, privacy enhancing technology, we talk about de-identification. There's a lot of complex concepts, but it is very real and concrete issues affecting our citizens. And if you talk about cross-border trade, that has economic impacts, that has national security impacts. So if we look at the top issues happening now, I think, in our society, online harms, protection of children online, all of these have privacy issues. And I think the statistics were showing that in cross-regulatory fields, where there's more than one domain, privacy is very, very often there. So I think we have more work than ever before. I think the importance is greater than ever before. And the good news is that the collaboration is greater than ever before. And we have amazing thought leaders and an amazing community that will continue to generate that trust. They'll do that in a principled manner, in a pragmatic manner. And I'm going to continue to advocate that prioritizing privacy is good for individuals, it's good for the economy, it's good for innovation, and it's good for the world. And we have to do more of that work, and I look forward to working collaboratively with all of this amazing community in protecting and promoting privacy for current and future generations.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And indeed, your energy is contagious. And I think everybody now understands what is driving you to be the chair of the GPA for the upcoming years. Thank you for your time. And also thanks to everybody who joined us online. Before we wrap up, I just want to say a happy Thanksgiving to our friends in the US for the holiday tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you so much.